45 minutes. And then do something, use music or some pleasant sounds, or just go in and rub the person's back or something and wake them up, but wake them up to something that is going to, will be engaging. It may simply be a little snack that you prepared. Mom, it's time to get up. I've got your peaches ready for you. So that there's an immediate sort of attention capturing stimulus that you provide so the person can come up out of the nap. So allow the nap, keep it to the as short a period of time as possible, draw the person out with something that's attractive, that is going to be attractive to the person. In the peak times, you should make a list of the things that the person likes to do with you and that the person is able to do by herself or himself. Listening to old music, watching old TV videos, watching even YouTube videos. You can watch 20 years of the Ed Sullivan Show on YouTube. And if we're talking about older people, these are people who have probably watched all those 1950s and 1960s TV shows, I Love Lucy and whatnot. And they can watch them. You can help them. Maybe they want to have headphones or something. But if you can time peak periods of attention with something that they like to do and become engaged in, then for the person who needs to do some work, those can be times when you can try letting your person be alone, and you basically have to bolt off and do 30 minutes of work or possibly more while that person's attention is drawn to something else. If you have the means and either have friends who can come in for brief periods of time, or if you can afford to have somebody come into the house, if you can tell them, these are activities the person really likes to do, I'm going to set them up for you, have them set up, have those done, and you can go off and do work during those periods of time. So limiting napping, working from home, use the highs and lows that from your observation of the person's day to work in your favor. Now, the other questions are much more difficult. What if the person keeps asking to drive? Generally speaking, what I suggest is enlisting your primary care provider's help. Certainly, if the person can understand that the doctor or the nurse is saying, you are no longer able to drive, that can help a little. But if they can write it down on a piece of paper, or ideally on a prescription pad note, that here's a prescription and it says, Dad, it says on your prescription, you cannot drive anymore. That's one strategy. The second strategy that came to my mind was, okay, where do you want to drive? You want to drive to the store. I'll tell you what, I need your help getting to the store. Let me drive and you tell me where to turn and how to navigate. So you become the navigator for me on this ride. Other things that people do, they're a little devious, but they also work, is to get a mechanic to disable the person's car. And so you can say, Mom, the car just doesn't work anymore. Or even allow the person to go out and try to start the car and it doesn't work. Some people have actually taken the car away and they do something that I don't much like, but it also works. And that's, they say things like, your granddaughter needed a car at college and we gave her your car. So a couple of strategies: enlist the help of your provider, offer the person a role in driving, and disable the car. You know, the drinking question here, my dad is drinking more and more and gets physical with us sometimes. Should I put him in a nursing home? First thing I would say is there's absolutely no reason for you to be hurt as a caregiver. That is not part of your role. It's not part of your obligation. It's not part of what's expected of you. So for you not to get hurt is absolutely okay. And you've got to give yourself permission to avoid that. You can, the only thing I could think of, and I don't know if Dr. Parker, when she gets on, she might have some ideas, is actually to talk with your provider, but also to talk with adult protective services. You know, usually we think about adult protective services as protecting the person from neglect and abuse. But if the person is becoming abusive, that organization, they have personnel who are skilled at this, who may be able to offer some suggestions about ways to avoid physical violence. The other thing I thought of, but I just don't know if it would work, is actually watering down the alcohol so that if the person is drinking, there's less effect. I would say if the situation it becomes increasingly violent and you are increasingly in jeopardy, then solutions like moving the person out or moving away from the person, I think are strongly to be considered. Under no circumstances should you be hurt. Finding information about respite care, I think the place to go there is the Area Agency on Aging. Every county has one. You can call or text them and ask them for listings. It's complicated business because it's either something that is depending on income levels, something that's supported, and you can get some financial help, or if it's private pay, then they may be able to make referrals. The other thing I would say is to go to the Alzheimer's Association and see if there are networks of family caregivers who have something like a next door neighbor page where they swap information about reliable, competent respite care, independent respite care providers, individuals who are not licensed, but who, you can get good referrals. These are trustworthy, competent people, and their prices are reasonable. So those are the quick answers to what I think are some very good and complicated questions. I'm going to stop sharing the screen and see if there are other questions that popped up in the chat. Oh, my mom seems to be mixing up what I believe she's dreaming with reality. Talked to her in this regard, but never actually say point blank, it didn't happen. Something else I should be aware of at this stage. So that's an important question. One of the things to ask your physician is she or he quite clear about the diagnosis? If your mom has a Lewy body dementia, one of the components of that dementia are hallucinations. These are very real to the person, even though there's no visual stimulus for them, no stimulus in reality. Often those hallucinations are benign, they're not scary, and you can actually incorporate them into your conversation with your mother if they're pleasant. They're often little kids and small animals. If they're frightening, then I would say go with finding out what your mother's feeling, rather than saying, "Oh, that didn't happen." Say, "Tell me tell me about it," and then try to divert her attention to something that is a time maybe when she was frightened once before and then became calmer. It doesn't work well to challenge the person's perceptions. And that's, I think, what I've got to say. Any other questions, Cornelya?
I just posted one in the chat, and Dr. Parker, if you want to piggyback off of Dr. Hepburn's remarks before we transition to your presentation?
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Hepburn. Dr. Hepburn's given you an awful lot of information about how to be a better caregiver. But instead of just randomly asking a Dr. Hepburn or a Dr. Parker these questions on a webinar, I strongly encourage you to take a class on caregiving. Now, our Alzheimer's Association has a number of caregiving classes to teach you how to become a better caregiver. We here at the Roybal Center or and the Goizueta Alzheimer's Disease Research Center have classes specifically for caregivers. If you live in South Georgia, and even if you don't, the Rosalind Carter Center for Caregiving also has caregiving classes. So if you're a caregiver, whether you're caregiving for somebody who has Alzheimer's, dementia, heart failure, or cancer, please learn more about the disease process that your loved one is experiencing, and go to a caregiving class to learn a little bit more about the nuances of the disease and how it may manifest in different people. But more importantly, one of the reasons you want to become a trained caregiver is so that you can be the best caregiver that you can be. Okay. And it's not easy being a caregiver, and everybody's patient. I say patient, but everybody's loved one is a little different. You know, the way your grandmother and grandfather experience dementia may be different from the way your spouse manages or manifests dementia. So be the best caregiver that you can be by enrolling in a caregiver training class. You know, the Alzheimer's Association has them, the Area Administration on Aging has them. Some of your local hospitals will even have caregiving classes. And beyond the caregiving classes in these particular organizations, caregiving support groups, advocacy groups also have caregiving classes. So to be the best caregiver that you can be, you need to become a better trained caregiver so that you can answer some of these questions. The scheduling that Dr. Hepburn talked about is very, very important. And when you take our caregiving classes, you learn about establishing a routine, just as you would with a young child. Not to say that being an older person with dementia means that you're a child, but you do revert back to a childlike state. And regularity and scheduling helps with the caregiving responsibilities that all of us have to face. Dr. Hepburn?
Thank you. I think that's absolutely right. The idea of becoming more and more trained as a caregiver is essential. It's a clinical role. I mean, this is not easy stuff at all. And the more training, the more skills you can develop, the better the feeling of confidence and competence that you have, the better things are going to go. We'll post some links to a couple of studies that are going on or about to go on. One of them is the Telesavvy at Home, which is a fully online, self-paced course in dementia family caregiving. It's like a continuing education course. You just sign on and you can move through the course at your own pace. So we'll get that link for you.
Thank you. All right, so Dr. Parker, you are responding to a lot of questions that we received as it relates to memory loss and dementia today.
Okay, so Cornelya has, and for those of you whom this is a repeat, just bear with us because everybody doesn't get the same information the same way the first time. They may get a little differently the second time. Next, please. Okay, so a lot of people ask us repeatedly, you know, my mother doesn't have Alzheimer's, she just has dementia. Well, what you need to appreciate, well, all of us need to appreciate, is that dementia is brain dysfunction. And there are lots of different causes for that brain dysfunction. And so these are the main risk factors for having brain dysfunction. You know, as we've talked about before, dementia is an umbrella term for many different disorders that fall underneath an umbrella. In neurology terms, we like to think of it as a spectrum of disorders. So for Alzheimer's in particular, the older you are, the more likely you are to develop a dementing disorder. If you are female, as opposed to male, the more likely you are to develop a dementing disorder. And your genetics, you know, if you have, Dr. Law's favorite joke is pick your parents wisely. Well, in our family, we have longevity, but we also have a high risk of strokes, which brings me to the next bullet. Outside of these first two bullets, advanced age, genetics, and gender, there's very little. There are lots of things that we can do, that can affect our ability to have brain dysfunction. Chief among them are developing cardiovascular disease, because that puts us at risk for stroke. That's why stroke is the leading point on that bullet. What are some of the things that lead to stroke? Atrial fibrillation, heart failure, hypertension, high cholesterol. These things in and of themselves are risk factors for developing stroke, and stroke is a major risk factor for developing a dementing illness. No, it's not Alzheimer's, but it is vascular dementia, and that's as a result of poor circulation and poor blood flow to the brain. Mood disorders, unmanaged and undiagnosed depression masquerades as a type of dementia. But once you fix the depression, you generally have a reversion back to normal brain function. Substance abuse, chronic alcoholism, alcoholic encephalopathy is a known risk factor for brain dysfunction or dementia. Tobacco, because it leads to those things that contribute to strokes. Medication interactions, getting a good relationship with your primary care doctor so that you can review the medications that you're on, particularly if you're over the age of 65, because older people don't metabolize drugs in the same manner. And sometimes, even though we're taking medications the proper way, in the proper dosage, and the way they've been prescribed, they may not interact well in our systems. People who are undergoing chemotherapy will have some cognitive dysfunction, some memory loss, some confusion. People who are taking benzodiazepines, those are things like Ativan, Librium, anti-anxiety medicines as a broad category, will have problems, particularly in older adults, with confusion. People who are sleep deprived, whether you're a young person or an old person, will have difficulties in the way that they process information. So if you've been told you had sleep apnea, please use your CPAP machine and make sure you get that evaluated, because that's a risk factor for developing brain dysfunction. Sleep apnea is also a risk for strokes, diabetes, thyroid disease, either an overactive thyroid or an underactive thyroid, head trauma. Head trauma coming from chronic physical abuse, from sports-related injuries, as in football, soccer, motor vehicle accidents. And then there are nutritional deficiencies that are contributory toward developing some cognitive dysfunction. So on this page, there are only two things we can't manage or do anything about. That's our age, our genetics, and our gender. Next, please. So in 2021, there's a report called the Lancet Commission report that came out in 2017 that showed that lifestyle was responsible for a significant amount of preventable dementia. So in 2021, they modified this report to include 3 other items: lifestyle changes that can be modified to minimize your risk of dementia include increasing your level of education. That means becoming literate so that you can interpret in information, increasing physical activity, 150 minutes or more of physical activity a week, maintaining social connectedness and social contact and trying to avoid social isolation, decrease the incidence of hearing loss at a certain age. And, you know, I'm nearing that age. If you're 65 years and above, check your hearing. And for those of us who have children and grandchildren who wear these earbuds all the time, that's not good for your hearing. and hearing loss is a risk factor or is associated with cognitive dysfunction. Hypertension, a 20-year history of hypertension, treated or untreated, is a risk for developing brain dysfunction and dementia. Obesity, being morbidly obese, not maintaining an ideal body weight, is a risk factor for developing dementia. Smoking, for its risk for stroke, depression, and diabetes, as I've alluded to before. So the more important thing for you to take away from this is that there are, for every 3 cases of dementia, at least 1 could be prevented by addressing these items that we've just outlined. Next, please. How do you protect your brain? Okay, we talked about smoking cessation, managing your hypertension, treating and preventing diabetes, maintaining an ideal body weight, daily physical exercise, aerobic activity, 150 minutes or more a week, treating depression, preventing social isolation, completing secondary education so that you become literate, and hearing loss management. Next. So what we like you to take away from our talks that you've been on, there are different types of dementia, and because there are different types of dementia, they have different causes, and those different causes have different therapies or treatments. But there are things that you can do to minimize or lessen your risk for developing a dementing disorder. And it's important that you understand, one, that dementia is not necessarily something that occurs to you just because you get older. You shouldn't develop dementia just because you're older. Your diet and your lifestyle can predict and protect your brain in terms of making it function a little bit better. There are brain healthy diets that are also heart healthy diets. So it's like, what do I eat to preserve my brain function? Anything you eat that minimizes your risk for hypertension and diabetes is something that's going to be good for your brain ultimately. These include consuming a Mediterranean diet, that's less red meat, more fish, more vegetables, less reliance on saturated fats, things like olive oil, vegetable oils, olive oil, lemon juice, anything that has to do with the Mediterranean diet, and you can look it up, they're all over the internet. The DASH diet, that's dietary strategies to reduce hypertension, and the MIND diet, which is a combination of both the Mediterranean diet and the DASH diet. These things do not cure dementia, but they're more likely to protect your brain from things that you can protect against, which has to do with cardiovascular disease. Include more fresh fruit, more vegetables, drink more water, consume olive oil, unsaturated fats, eat less fried foods, eat fewer red meats, eat fewer processed foods. Those are things that we can all do to make sure that we're doing our part to make sure that we protect our brains. Okay, Cornelya, I think I've got it.
Okay, so before we transition to Whit, here are just 2 questions. Ms. Patty asked about her mother who is in a memory care facility, but she wants to nap and sleep a lot. What's considered too much sleep?
Well, I think that as you get a little bit older, particularly when you are in your 90s, sleep is something that people like to do. But keep in mind that the more stimulated somebody is, the more engaged they are, the more likely they are to, less likely, they are to take a nap. If there's nothing to do, if you're going to sit me in front of a television set, I'm going to go to sleep. Now, why am I going to go to sleep? A, because I can't see the television that you sat me in front of. I can't hear what's being said. So I'm not being engaged and I'm not being interacted with. So as Dr. Hepburn talked about earlier, scheduling activities and figuring out when better times are for people to nap, that all relates to scheduling a daily routine for somebody. My mother goes to adult daycare, and she's a lot brighter when she goes to adult daycare between the hours of 10 and 3 because there's something for her to do. There's something that's engaging her. And for people who think the idea for people with dementia and older is to just sit them in front of a television set or sit them with a caregiver who doesn't talk to them, doesn't speak to them, doesn't read to them or do something, that doesn't help a whole lot. So because their brain's not being activated, they go to sleep. So a lot of people can't get up and do exercise, but you can talk to them, you can paint their fingernails, you can do something that's that they can participate in that engages what they can in terms of what their cognitive function is. And that's what a lot of people don't do. Okay, so let's see. There's a question from Ms. Pritchett. What resources do physicians give to people upon the diagnosis of dementia? Well, I think that depends upon where you are and what type of dementia you have. But I will say that most of the providers are going to refer you to an agency, an advocacy organization where you can get more information, like the Alzheimer's Foundation of America, the Alzheimer's Association is another place to get resources. Depending upon what your needs are, your provider may have a social worker or case manager who can direct you to those resources that are more specific to your need. Those things are different family to family, and the capability of your provider to give you those resources is also limited. So you have to do your own research a lot of times. I hate to say that. It'd be nice to say that the doctor has all the answers, but the doctor does not. The doctor is not omniscient, okay? They can't provide everything for everybody, and we have to do a little bit of this work on our own. So I'm going to refer you back to a lot of the advocacy organizations for whatever dementing disorder it is that you're interested in, whether it's Alzheimer's or Parkinson's disease or Lewy body disease. There are special advocacy organizations that have a wealth of information for you, but not only do they have information about the disease process, they also have a lot of information about resources that you can likely access in your community. And chief among these resources would be developing a relationship with a caregiving support group for whatever that entity is. Okay, there's another question here. How does tinnitus fit into the aging process? Tinnitus is a disorder. It's a hearing disorder, and you do need to see an ear, nose, and throat doctor to determine why you have tinnitus, because there are different things that can cause ear ringing or ringing in the ears. Hearing loss is the thing that is associated with dementia. And part of this is just like having visual deficits. How you hear things and how you see things help you interpret different stimuli. And if there's a dysfunction in how you see things, and if there's some dysfunction in how you hear things, you may interpret what comes into your system a little bit differently, which is why we need to get our annual hearing check, our visual exam. And tinnitus is a very specific audiologic problem that needs to be diagnosed and carefully evaluated by an ear, nose, and throat doctor. Okay.
Okay, Dr. Hepburn had one more point to make.
I just wanted to add to what Dr. Parker was saying, and also go back to the question about mapping by the caregiver. One reason people map is because they're depressed. And I think that's something to take quite seriously and have someone look at, have a physician or a nurse practitioner look at that. Just all of the advice I think that Dr. Parker gave and my suggestions about keeping people active, keeping them engaged to whatever the top level of their capacity for engagement is one of the best, preventive measures against depression. But depression does often manifest itself in sleepiness and overnapping, oversleeping.
Okay, I think that does it for me.
Me too.
All right, well, thank you all again. Welcome, Whit, come on in. Let's tell everybody about our healthy aging. If you've heard about it and you signed up, or you're going to get a chance to hear from Whit today about how you can be a part of our Emory Healthy Aging Study.
All right, thank you, Cornelia. Let's see when I can share my screen here. I'll pull up our website. For those that are joining us for the first time, welcome. We're really excited to have you here. My name is Whit. I'm the communication specialist for the Emory Healthy Aging Study and our sub-study, the Emory Healthy Brain Study. I like to come on here and talk occasionally about our unique research opportunity because it's a little bit different from what you might be expecting. The Emory Healthy Aging Study is an online research initiative. We are working to basically build like a big health database that helps us understand how we age and the cause of certain age-related diseases. And we are doing this by asking our participants to complete a health history questionnaire once a year. Like I said, this is done entirely online, so you don't have to come see us. You can literally do it from your sofa on a iPhone or an iPad or your computer or pretty much any internet capable device. The stipulations for participating in our research study is you have to be at least 18 years old. You have to have an internet capable device, and you need to be able to read and understand English because our survey is currently only in English. If you meet those three criteria and you have an extra free 30 minutes of time pretty much at any point during the year, you can actually help support our research. And I pull up our website here because this is really kind of where it all starts. And I like to walk people through the process of what does it actually look like if I were interested in going and joining the Emory Healthy Aging Study. And I will drop our URL into the chat box as well as my email address because I always want to make sure that if folks have questions about the study or, hey, maybe I signed up or I think I signed up, can you check on my status? Definitely reach out to me. But it all starts by visiting our website here at healthyaging.emory.edu. And then we have this big yellow join the study button up here in the top right-hand corner. And we've tried to break this down into 4 steps. The first one being registration, where you'd actually kind of create your own username, password, and this is a login for our online portal. This is a really important step because this is how we keep all of our information very secure and safe. The second one would actually be going through the online consent. It's the same process you would go through in an actual, on-site research study. You're just doing it virtually, kind of like an e-sign. We get a little bit of contact information from you in case we got to reach out to you for whatever reason. And then finally, we have the actual health history questionnaire. And on that questionnaire, we asked a variety of different types of things. We like to learn about, what are your habits? We got a really great exercise demo at the start of our webinar here. And, it's a really important thing. What's good for your heart is good for your brain. And we want to know about that kind of stuff. Are you getting your exercise? Are you doing, vigorous exercise or maybe mild exercise, and how frequently? Are you eating your fruits and vegetables? What kind of diet do you have? Is it that Mediterranean or is it something maybe a little bit different? We also ask you things about your other habits and interests, such as maybe playing musical instruments or how often do you read? And then we kind of get into some health history there as far as, do you have a history of certain diseases? Do your parents or other, relatives maybe suffer from Alzheimer's disease? And we collect all this different types of information and we look at it year over year to try hopefully and identify patterns that come out of that data. And it also helps us identify potential candidates for one of our research sub-studies. That's called the Emory Healthy Brain Study. And that is actually specifically focused on biomarkers in our bodies or identifying these biomarkers in our bodies that will help us predict who's going to develop dementia and Alzheimer's. All of this starts again with the Emory Healthy Aging Study. That questionnaire is a really important thing, and it's a really easy way to start getting involved in research. Maybe if you've been on the fence and you're not quite sure if it's something that you want to participate in, I encourage everybody to definitely check this out because it's a really easy thing to do. And of course, like I said here, I'm going to drop my information into the chat box in case you have any questions. This is open to anybody here in the United States. Obviously, with it being virtual, it's very easy to do anywhere in the United States. We currently have just over 30,000 people who have actually registered for the study. Our goal is 100,000. So every person that we get on there, chips us a little bit closer to that final goal. And we're really excited to be able to talk and share this with you all today, just because it's a little bit different from what you would typically expect as far as, being in a research study.
So on that note, can I just add something to what Whit's talking to you about? And Whit has been on here week after week talking about the Healthy Aging Study. And one of the reasons we're promoting the healthy aging study is if you don't want to get blood drawn, you don't want to get an LP, and you don't want to participate in any kind of X-ray machine, the healthy aging study is the least invasive and the easiest way for you to get involved in neurologic research. At the same time, however, we have a number of different studies conducted by a number of different researchers and investigators here at the Alzheimer's Disease Research Study that will require a little bit more involvement than filling out an online form. You heard a couple of weeks ago from Dr. Whitney Wharton, who was doing special studies on hormones and dementia. You've heard from Dr. Glenna Brewster, who's done studies on caregiving. You also heard from Lenora Higginbotham, who's studying proteomics and how that figures into the development of Alzheimer's. If you consult our Emory Alzheimer's Disease Research Center website, you can find a list of the different studies we have. Drug studies and drug trials are not for people who do not have a confirmed diagnosis of Alzheimer's dementia. Those are for people who specifically have Alzheimer's disease. As we've talked about before, there's several different types of dementia. There's several different things that can result in a brain dysfunction, not necessarily Alzheimer's, maybe something else. But the healthy aging study is one study that you can get involved in that doesn't require you to give up anything except some information and fill out an online study. If you want to go further, if you're not afraid of giving us your blood, you're not afraid of getting a lumbar puncture, if you're not afraid of getting involved in an MRI machine or a PET scan, there are other studies for you. Please look at our overall website to see the different studies that are available. Thanks.
All right, what do you want to, for the listeners, tell the website and repeat your email address and telephone number?
Absolutely. So my email address is going to be jefferson.morgan@emory.edu. And our web address here is healthyaging.emory.edu.
Okay. All right, everyone. So before we go, Matt, come on, let us give us an update about who we can expect to see at 3 o'clock.
Hi, everyone.
For the CEP, our Cognitive Empowerment Program today.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, my name is Matt. We'll be doing the CP Community Live in just a few minutes. I just posted the link in chat to register for that. Today, we're going to be joined by Dr. Casey Vickers. She's going to be talking about tips and tricks and techniques to improve your memory and just things that can help with that. So I think it would be applicable to lots of different types of people. So please come and join us. Like I said, I posted the link to register for that event in chat just a second ago.
Okay, so we're going to stick around for a few more minutes while you all take the next 60 seconds to grab all of those links. Thank you again for joining us. We will be back here next Tuesday at 2 p.m. with more of our Emory faculty and staff sharing updates and information with you about the research enterprise as it relates to memory loss and impairment and caregiving. Thank you. Thank you for the kind words. We look forward to seeing you guys here next Tuesday. We're still posting a few more links in the chat, so take a few moments to write that down. You can also go to our website, www.alzheimers.emory.edu. Okay, any more questions? Oh, and so if you are new and you're like, what is the CEP? So that is a different link, same platform. We're using the Zoom link. It just won't be the link that you are logged in now. You will have to log out of this link and register for CEP. Now, if you have registered once for CEP, you are good. Just log in to the reminder email you got in your inbox. But if you are new, it is a different link from our Brain Talk Live link, okay? So I just want to clarify that for everyone. Okay, any other comments, remarks, or questions before we close out? It's 3:02. You're welcome. Thank you, Miss Dorothy. Miss Marcia might need the CEP link. You might need to post it a couple of times. Brooke, if you want to go over to CEP, that's where Dr. Vickers will be sharing the tips on memory. Yes, Miss Beth, this is recorded and it will be on our YouTube channel. Also, I send out an email with the link to the recording at either late Monday afternoon or Tuesday afternoon. So just monitor your inbox with an email from me. Ms. Ruth, we might ask Dr. Goldstein to come on in a couple of weeks. You're asking about online games and apps recommended for brain health. She is our neuropsychologist and has actually developed some apps that are evidence-based. Okay. Oh, Ms. Ruth, that would be great if you got a couple of friends together to participate in the study as a team. That would be awesome. Yeah. www.healthyaging.emory.edu if you want to be a part of the online study, Emory Healthy Aging. And we'll send all this out in an email. So just be on high alert when you get an email. It does have several links in it. Okay, I think that's it. Head on over to CEP if you can. Crystal, can you post that link again? Yeah. Oh, thank you, Ms. Margaret. She said, thank you for the discussion as a caregiver, very helpful. Okay, if you can put the link up for the CEP, I guess people are having some. Well, anyone can attend the Cognitive Empowerment Program, Ms. Susan. So if you want to go over and just check it out, I recommend you head over there and grab that link. It's via Zoom, just to see what it's about. All right, I think that's all of the comments. All right, you're welcome, Mrs. Washington. Yes, anyone can join Cognitive Empowerment Program. It's just theirs is a little more focused. They only have one faculty or one speaker during their 1 hour session, whereas we may have 3 or 4 in 1 hour. So, all right. Okay, all right. We will see you all back here next week. Thank you for joining us.